You thought this was over, I whispered to myself as rain splattered against the cracked windows of my tiny apartment, each drop echoing like a countdown I couldn't stop. Isabella Harris, 24, clutching a stack of unpaid bills and a phone buzzing relentlessly with reminders of promises broken by my ex-fiancé. My heart raced, as if it knew what was coming before my mind could catch up. The dim streetlight flickered through the blinds, casting jagged shadows that danced across the peeling wallpaper, each one a reminder of the humiliation I had endured just hours ago at the engagement party that was meant to be my happy ending. I sank onto the edge of my worn-out futon, trying to steady my breath, listening to the hum of the city outside, but every honking horn and siren only reminded me how small and exposed I felt. Then, headlights pierced the darkness, slicing through the rain like a blade, and I froze, a primal warning shooting up my spine. The car was sleek, black, untouched by the storm, the engine purring with controlled power, and it stopped directly in front of my building. I didn't move. A door opened with the smooth precision of someone who never made mistakes, and there he was, Dominic Romano, the man whose name I had heard whispered in hushed tones across the city, the man whose presence alone demanded attention and obedience. His eyes, cold and sharp as a winter sky, met mine from across the slick pavement, and the world narrowed to just the two of us. He stepped closer, and each movement was deliberate, measured, his polished shoes silent against the wet asphalt. Rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead, but it didn't diminish the authority radiating from him. If anything, it magnified it. Then, without a word, he extended a hand, a diamond ring catching the weak streetlight, glinting with impossible brilliance. "You're mine now," he said, voice low, precise, and somehow both terrifying and compelling. My pulse jumped, adrenaline flooding through me, a mix of fear and disbelief. I stumbled back instinctively, almost tripping over the uneven sidewalk, but Dominic's gaze didn't waver. The ring wasn't just a jewel. It was a declaration, a challenge, a boundary I hadn't realized existed until this very moment. I wanted to argue, to flee, to reclaim any shred of control, but my words caught in my throat, swallowed by the gravity of his presence. Every instinct screamed danger, but another, quieter voice inside me whispered curiosity, fascination, the pull of something vast and unknowable that stretched beyond my cramped apartment and the broken pieces of my life. Dominic didn't rush me. He didn't need to. The rain fell harder, plastering us both in a cold, relentless curtain, but his aura of control remained unshaken, a stark contrast to the chaos I felt inside. I lifted my head, heart pounding, caught between the shame of the night before and the undeniable draw of the man before me, and I realized that nothing would ever be the same. This wasn't just a claim on my hand. It was a claim on my life, my choices, my future. And as I stared into those piercing eyes, I knew the storm wasn't outside anymore. It was in me. And Dominic Romano had just handed me the first page of a story that would pull me far beyond anything I had ever imagined, leaving me breathless and on the edge of a decision I didn't yet know I could make. The ride to Dominic Romano's estate was silent, the rain still falling in relentless sheets against the sleek black exterior of the car, blurring the city lights into streaks of color that made the streets appear unreal, almost dreamlike. Isabella Harris gripped the edge of the leather seat, nails pressing into the soft material, heart hammering as each turn brought her closer to a world she had only glimpsed in whispered stories, a world of power and unspoken rules, of wealth that made her own life feel fragile and precarious. Dominic sat beside her, composed, his presence a calm force that contrasted sharply with the storm outside, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, eyes scanning the rain-drenched streets with the precision of someone accustomed to control, and when his gaze flicked to her, it was as if he could read every thought, every hesitation, every flicker of uncertainty that crossed her mind. The car pulled up to the grand gates of the estate, wrought iron twisting into intricate patterns, and the security lights cast long shadows across the wet pavement, illuminating the sprawling mansion beyond, windows glowing with a soft golden light that promised warmth and power in equal measure. As they drove through the gates, Isabella could not help but notice the meticulous landscaping, fountains reflecting the stormy sky, and the distant outline of a pool, water rippling in time with the wind. The mansion loomed closer, a fortress of elegance and authority, every detail precise, calculated, and intimidating. Dominic parked, and without a word, he opened the door for her, his movements deliberate, his attention unwavering, and Isabella felt a pull of both fear and fascination, knowing that stepping out of the car meant crossing a threshold into a world where she would be measured and judged in ways she could not yet comprehend. The front entrance was a sweeping staircase of polished marble, and the doors opened to reveal a foyer that seemed to absorb the rain, the warmth inside clashing with the chill still clinging to her damp coat. Golden light reflecting off crystal chandeliers, casting fractured patterns on the floor, and as she followed Dominic inside, the soft echo of their footsteps filled the space, a rhythmic reminder of how small she felt in a place built for command. He led her through the hallways, each room more impressive than the last, art and antiques speaking of lineage and taste, of power accumulated and curated, and when they reached the sitting room, he gestured for her to take a seat on a plush velvet chair that seemed almost too large for her slight frame. Dominic remained standing, posture perfect, eyes steady on her, and there was a weight in the air, an unspoken expectation, a tension that made every breath feel deliberate. Isabella tried to steady her racing heart, tracing the contours of the ring he had given her earlier, its brilliance catching the light and reminding her that nothing about this encounter was ordinary. Dominic spoke, his voice calm, measured, yet carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. You will learn how this world works, how to move, how to protect yourself, and how to exist in a place where decisions are made before they are asked. The words settled over her, heavy yet compelling, and as she looked around the room, taking in the height of the ceilings, the texture of the furnishings, the subtle hum of electricity and life in the mansion, she realized that this was not just a home, but a realm of influence, a stage for power and precision. Every instinct in her screamed caution, every sense alert. But beneath it, a flicker of curiosity stirred, a desire to understand, to navigate, to adapt, and perhaps, in time, to claim a measure of agency for herself. Dominic finally gestured toward the windows, rain cascading outside, city lights reflecting like distant stars, and for the first time, Isabella felt the storm within her begin to shift, the tension of fear and fascination blending into a fragile awareness that the world she had stepped into was dangerous, commanding, and utterly compelling, and that the choice she would make next could change everything. Isabella Harris remained seated in the velvet chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap, feeling the cool touch of the ring that Dominic Romano had placed there, a constant reminder of the power dynamic that now defined the space between them. The room was quiet, yet charged with an energy that made the air seem thicker, each subtle sound, the soft tick of a clock, the distant hum of the mansion's heating system, amplified in her awareness. Dominic paced slowly near the floor-to-ceiling windows, gaze occasionally flicking to her, his presence dominating without a word, the measured cadence of his steps echoing like a heartbeat that was not hers but seemed to synchronize with her own racing pulse. Isabella tried to follow the intricate patterns of the carpet beneath her feet, tracing them with her eyes in an effort to distract herself. But the thought of the world outside this mansion, ordinary and chaotic, seemed almost distant now, irrelevant compared to the meticulous order Dominic exuded. He stopped suddenly, turning to face her fully, and the weight of his gaze held her in place, her breath catching as she realized that this man could command not only attention but the very atmosphere of a room. "You must learn to anticipate," he said, voice calm, deliberate, and precise, "to see what is not immediately visible, to understand before questions are asked." Each word was a lesson, each syllable a subtle test, and Isabella found herself leaning slightly forward despite every instinct telling her to retreat, captivated by the clarity and authority behind his instructions. She noticed the way his hand rested lightly on the arm of a nearby chair, fingers long and controlled, movements economical yet purposeful, and in that precision, she sensed a promise of guidance, structure, and a world ordered in a way she had never known. The room seemed to stretch, the chandeliers catching the faint light from the rain-soaked night outside, scattering it in fractured patterns across the polished floors, and Isabella became acutely aware of the contrast between the storm beyond the windows and the calculated serenity within. Dominic moved closer, and the subtle shift of space around him pulled her gaze upward, his eyes locking with hers, icy yet not unkind, assessing, evaluating, and challenging simultaneously. He spoke again, quieter this time, almost as if confiding a truth meant only for her. In this world, perception shapes reality, and every choice you make echoes far beyond the moment. Observe, adapt, and remember that the smallest action can ripple into consequence. The words resonated, stirring a mix of apprehension and intrigue, the tension between fear and fascination growing more acute as the minutes stretched into a silent dialogue of glances and unspoken understanding. Isabella adjusted her posture, trying to steady the rapid pulse in her chest, aware that every detail, the way Dominic's shoulders squared, the subtle rise and fall of his breathing, the faint scent of his cologne, was part of a larger rhythm she had yet to decode. The mansion, with its vast corridors and deliberate design, seemed less intimidating as she began to comprehend the structure and the meticulous logic behind it, and an unexpected clarity emerged within her. Dominic's presence was no longer only imposing. It was instructive, a guide into a realm where control and understanding defined survival and influence. And as she sat there, absorbing the cadence of his words, Isabella felt the stirrings of awareness, a quiet readiness to meet the challenges of a world she had just entered, knowing that each subsequent step would define not only her path, but the dynamic unfolding between them. A delicate balance of trust, observation, and adaptation. The storm outside began to ease, leaving only the soft patter of rain against the tall windows, and Isabella Harris remained seated, absorbing the sheer scale and precision of Dominic Romano's world. The room around her a mixture of warm light, polished surfaces, and carefully curated objects that spoke of wealth and exacting taste. She traced the edges of the armchair with her fingers, feeling the smooth velvet under her fingertips, every detail a lesson in observation, in awareness, in understanding how even small nuances could convey information about the environment and the people within it. Dominic moved to a sideboard, selecting a glass and filling it with water, his movements deliberate and measured, and as he approached, the faint scent of polished wood and clean linen mingled with the subtle aroma of his cologne, creating an invisible presence that seemed to occupy the room as much as he did. Isabella's eyes followed him, noting the precise alignment of his steps, the way he adjusted his posture subtly to accommodate the space, each gesture a combination of authority and care that demanded attention without overt pressure. He set the glass on a side table near her, then returned to the window, watching the rain-laden cityscape with an intensity that made her heart rate accelerate even as her mind tried to rationalize the calmness he projected. "Focus," he said, voice steady, carrying the weight of command, yet tempered with an unusual softness that intrigued her. "Notice everything, remember it, and understand the significance behind each movement, each sound, each reaction. Control is not taken, it is observed, and influence begins with perception." Isabella nodded subtly, absorbing every word, feeling the weight of responsibility and the need for acute attention as her own thoughts raced to keep pace with the guidance being offered. The mansion's high ceilings amplified the smallest sounds, the click of a hinge, the rustle of fabric, the distant hum of the heating system, and she became aware of how easily one could be attuned to or distracted by these subtleties, how quickly a misstep could alter impressions and outcomes in a world governed by careful calculation. Dominic turned toward her again, eyes sharp yet not unyielding, and gestured toward the expansive view beyond the windows, the city lights shimmering through the dissipating rain, reflecting in pools on the wet streets below. "Perspective is essential," he said, "understanding where you stand in relation to others, the environment, the decisions being made. Awareness gives you options, and options give you control." Isabella felt a flicker of comprehension, a sense of clarity emerging from the storm of anxiety and uncertainty that had dominated her mind since that night. She straightened in her seat, shoulders tense yet attentive, heart still quickened but focused, realizing that this was the first step in learning the unspoken language of influence, power, and observation that Dominic's world required. The space between them carried a quiet tension, a shared understanding that the next hours would challenge her perceptions, test her instincts, and shape the way she would navigate not only the mansion but the wider network of decisions, relationships, and authority that she had only glimpsed from a distance. And as Dominic moved once more toward the window, light catching the contours of his face, Isabella understood that this was more than guidance. It was a deliberate shaping of perspective, an invitation to see the world through a lens where calculation, awareness, and presence defined success and safety, and she felt a cautious anticipation of the lessons yet to come, each moment pregnant with potential and the subtle thrill of entering a realm where her choices mattered in ways she was only beginning to understand. Isabella Harris followed Dominic Romano through the grand corridors of the mansion, each step echoing softly against the polished marble floors, her senses heightened to every detail. The way the light reflected off crystal chandeliers, the subtle patterns in the rugs beneath her feet, the faint hum of hidden mechanisms that hinted at meticulous design and careful control. Dominic moved with effortless authority, hands occasionally brushing the smooth surfaces as he passed, checking the alignment of objects or the position of a chair with quiet precision, and Isabella found herself noting everything, trying to understand the rhythm of his world, the unspoken rules that governed it. They entered a study, walls lined with books in rich leather bindings, shelves perfectly organized, a large oak desk dominating the center, and a soft rug cushioning the floor beneath, creating an atmosphere of both authority and comfort. Dominic gestured for her to sit, and she did, the chair enveloping her, the weight of the room pressing lightly against her awareness. He remained standing, distance measured, posture composed, eyes steady on her as he began to speak, voice calm and deliberate, each word carefully chosen. Observation and patience define power. You will find that movement without awareness is wasted effort, and understanding comes before action. Isabella felt the weight of his expectation, a mixture of challenge and guidance, and she leaned forward slightly, absorbing his instructions, heart racing but mind alert. The soft ticking of a clock in the corner marked time in a way that felt almost sacred, each second carrying significance, and she realized that the mansion, for all its grandeur, was a controlled environment designed to teach discipline, perception, and subtle influence. Dominic moved to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city, and Isabella followed his gaze, noticing the contrast between the storm beyond and the meticulous calm inside, the way shadows danced across the floors and walls in response to the fading light. Awareness is a skill, he continued, and it is built through attention to detail, through recognizing patterns and anticipating outcomes. The smallest element can alter the balance of a situation, and those who master this see opportunities where others see only obstacles. Isabella nodded, internalizing the lesson, feeling a quiet determination rising within her to meet the challenge, to understand the nuances of this environment, and to navigate it with intelligence and care. Dominic finally returned to her side, placing the glass of water he had been holding on the desk with deliberate precision, and his eyes met hers again, sharp, assessing, encouraging yet unyielding. She sensed that this was not merely instruction but a subtle shaping of her perspective, an invitation to learn the language of influence, of presence, and of calculated choice. As she absorbed the gravity of the moment, the interplay of authority and attention, she felt a mixture of anticipation and resolve, understanding that every observation, every thought, and every careful step she took from this point forward would matter, shaping her path and the delicate dynamic unfolding between them. The storm outside had passed, leaving only the distant patter of rain, but within her, a storm of curiosity, focus, and quiet exhilaration began to build, each heartbeat attuned to the rhythm of Dominic Romano's world, preparing her for the lessons, challenges, and subtle revelations that lay ahead, knowing that the choices she made in these quiet moments would echo far beyond the walls of the mansion. Isabella Harris rose from the velvet chair, her legs slightly stiff from sitting, and followed Dominic Romano as he moved toward the library, a vast room lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the scent of aged paper and polished wood filling the air, creating a sense of quiet gravity that pressed against her awareness. The soft hum of the mansion's lighting system blended with the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards beneath their feet, emphasizing the stillness and precision of the environment. Dominic gestured toward a large table at the center, its surface immaculate, reflecting the soft golden glow of the chandeliers above, and Isabella approached. Cautiously, noting the careful arrangement of objects, each placed with deliberate intention, each telling a story of control and meticulousness. He began to speak, voice steady, measured, and authoritative. Observation is not passive. It is active, attentive, and responsive. You will learn to see the subtle cues, the micro-gestures, the choices that define how people respond. Isabella nodded, absorbing the weight of his words, feeling the tension in her chest ease slightly as understanding crept in, each sentence providing both challenge and guidance. The mansion, though luxurious and imposing, felt alive with lessons embedded in every detail, from the alignment of books to the positioning of furniture, and she realized that navigating this space required more than awareness. It demanded perception, patience, and a willingness to engage fully with the environment. Dominic walked to a window, rain now slowing outside, droplets tracing streaks down the glass, the city beyond shimmering with distant lights, and Isabella followed, noticing how his posture and gaze commanded presence without the need for force, his movements fluid yet precise, every action purposeful. He turned to her, eyes piercing yet measured, and continued, "Adaptation is essential. The world will present challenges in ways you do not anticipate, and success comes from anticipation, analysis, and deliberate response." Isabella felt a quiet determination building within her, a mix of apprehension and curiosity, the challenge of learning, understanding, and adapting thrilling and daunting at the same time. She studied his expressions, the subtle shifts in tone, the controlled gestures, and began to recognize patterns in behavior, realizing that each interaction carried meaning beyond the immediate words or movements, each detail a piece of a larger puzzle. Dominic's gaze softened briefly, acknowledging her attention and effort, yet remained firm, reminding her that mastery required discipline, awareness, and persistence. The room itself seemed to reinforce the lessons he imparted, the high ceilings, organized shelves, and polished surfaces reflecting clarity, order, and intent. Isabella inhaled slowly, focusing on the calm control he embodied, feeling her own awareness sharpen, understanding that she was not merely learning a set of instructions, but absorbing a mindset, a way of perceiving and engaging with a complex, ordered world. Every sound, every movement, every glance became part of a rhythm she was beginning to understand, and as she settled into the task of observation, she sensed the beginnings of confidence and anticipation, aware that the choices she made in the coming moments would resonate far beyond the walls of the library, shaping her understanding, her presence, and her connection to Dominic Romano's world. Isabella Harris lingered in the library, eyes scanning the spines of the leather-bound books as if the knowledge contained within could somehow transfer into her own understanding, her fingers tracing the edges of the shelves while the soft light from the chandeliers reflected in her wide, attentive eyes. Dominic Romano remained nearby, his posture calm, yet commanding, every movement precise, almost ritualistic, and she found herself studying the subtle shifts in his stance, the way his shoulders relaxed ever so slightly as he spoke, the way his gaze lingered on details that might have gone unnoticed by anyone less observant. The room seemed alive with expectation, the faint scent of polished wood and old paper mingling with the quiet rhythm of Dominic's voice as he continued to instruct, emphasizing awareness and the subtle art of influence, and Isabella felt her own thoughts aligning with his, a slow clarity forming amidst the initial whirlwind of awe and apprehension. He moved to the center of the room, gesturing toward a globe that sat atop a pedestal, and explained the importance of understanding context, position, and perspective in every decision, each word carrying a weight that demanded careful consideration. Isabella nodded, internalizing the lesson, her mind racing to connect the physical space of the room with the larger principles he was imparting, noting the way light fell across the polished floors, The reflection of chandeliers and the glossy surfaces, and the way minor details could convey meaning far beyond their immediate presence. As Dominic's voice guided her through exercises of observation, analysis, and anticipation, she began to sense a rhythm, a flow to the mansion that mirrored the cadence of his instructions, each corridor, window, and object forming part of an interconnected network of signals and insights that she could learn to read. The subtle hum of the heating system, the faint creak of floorboards under careful weight, and the soft swish of his coat as he shifted his stance all became part of a larger tableau, a living lesson in attention and perception. Isabella's breathing slowed, her focus sharpening, as she realized that the challenge was not simply to follow Dominic's commands but to internalize a way of thinking, a lens through which to interpret both environment and human behavior with acuity and discretion. The glow of the chandeliers highlighted the meticulous alignment of objects on tables and shelves, emphasizing the importance of structure and order, while Dominic's careful demonstration of posture, gesture, and timing illustrated how subtle cues could convey authority, intent, and attentiveness without a single word being spoken. Isabella felt a growing sense of competence, a cautious confidence that she could meet the demands of this world, her awareness expanding with every moment as she observed and mirrored, analyzed and interpreted, slowly bridging the gap between her own experiences and the precise, disciplined reality Dominic exemplified. As the lesson continued, the quiet intensity of the library enveloped her, the rhythm of Dominic's presence and instruction merging with her own developing understanding, leaving her poised on the edge of insight, ready to translate observation into action, and aware that every choice, every glance, every measured response would carry weight far beyond the immediate moment, shaping not only her perception but her growing alignment with the controlled, powerful world she had just begun to navigate. The evening had deepened, and the mansion was bathed in a warm, golden glow, each chandelier casting intricate patterns across the polished floors as Isabella Harris followed Dominic Romano through corridors that seemed endless, yet purposeful, each doorway, each archway a lesson in subtle control and careful design. The quiet hum of the mansion's systems blended with the occasional soft click of his polished shoes against marble, emphasizing the precision of the environment and the deliberate nature of every movement. Dominic paused near a balcony that overlooked the city, the lights below flickering like distant stars beneath a thin layer of mist from the receding rain, and he gestured for Isabella to stand beside him, his presence solid and commanding, a constant anchor in the vast space around them. She adjusted her posture instinctively, feeling the pull of his authority, yet also the unexpected steadiness it offered, and as she looked out at the sprawling cityscape, a new awareness settled within her, a sense of perspective she had not possessed before entering the mansion. Dominic's gaze shifted from the horizon to her, sharp and measured, and he spoke, his voice calm, yet laden with expectation. Decisions define presence, and presence defines opportunity. You will find that in observing, understanding, and anticipating, the margin between hesitation and advantage is measured in the smallest details. Isabella absorbed every word, noting the cadence of his speech, the subtle emphasis on particular phrases, the way his hands remained relaxed yet ready, the posture and poise suggesting authority without force. She began to recognize patterns in the mansion itself, the alignment of furnishings, the symmetry of objects, the calculated spacing of light and shadow, and how each detail reflected the discipline and intentionality of Dominic's world. As he guided her through the logic of observation, situational awareness, and adaptive response, she felt her initial apprehension giving way to focus, the storm of uncertainty replaced by a quiet determination to understand, to participate, and to align herself with the rhythm and expectations being presented. The air carried a subtle tension, a mixture of anticipation and calm authority, and Isabella became acutely aware of how each glance, each gesture, each deliberate pause could carry significance, how understanding the environment and the people within it could yield insight and advantage. Dominic finally gestured toward a small table near the balcony, a single glass of water resting there, and encouraged her to reflect on what she had observed, what she had learned, and how it might inform her choices going forward. emphasizing that awareness was not merely passive, but active, deliberate, and continuously evolving. Isabella stood, feeling a quiet shift inside herself, a sense of readiness and engagement she had never felt before, and as the golden light of the mansion enveloped them, she realized that the lessons were only beginning, that each step forward would demand focus, perception, and intentionality, and that the connection between observation, action, and consequence would define not only her presence in this world, but the evolving dynamic with Dominic Romano, a balance of authority, awareness, and mutual understanding that would shape the nights and days to come. The night had settled over the mansion, the last echoes of rain fading into the distant hum of the city below, and Isabella Harris stood by the balcony, absorbing the vastness of the world that Dominic Romano had revealed to her, the golden light from the chandeliers casting warm reflections across the polished floors and the intricate details of the room around her. She could feel the subtle shift in her own awareness, a combination of focus, curiosity, and anticipation, as if the lessons of observation, perception, and subtle influence had begun to take root in her mind and body. Each detail of the mansion, each movement Dominic had demonstrated, shaping her understanding of the balance between power and discretion. Dominic approached silently, his presence as commanding as ever, and gestured toward the cityscape stretching endlessly before them. Everything you have observed, everything you have processed tonight, will inform the choices you make tomorrow and the day after, he said, voice calm, measured, yet imbued with an unspoken weight of expectation. Isabella nodded, absorbing the statement, realizing that mastery of awareness was not instantaneous but cumulative, built from patience, attentiveness, and the deliberate application of insight. She took a slow breath, feeling the cool air against her skin, noticing the subtle reflections of light on the glass doors behind her, the faint shifting of shadows on the floor, the soft, deliberate movements of Dominic as he paced near the balcony, each motion communicating authority without a single word being raised. The world outside these walls will test your perception, he continued, and your ability to respond thoughtfully, to anticipate, and to act decisively will define not only your effectiveness but the influence you hold. Isabella's gaze traveled across the city lights, shimmering like distant stars through the dissipating fog, each one a reminder of possibilities, challenges, and choices she would face, and she realized that the mansion was not merely a place of instruction but a microcosm of the larger world, every detail a lesson in control, presence, and measured engagement. Dominic's eyes met hers again, the intensity tempered by a faint recognition of her growing comprehension, and she understood that the trust implicit in his guidance was contingent on her ability to apply observation with accuracy and intentionality, to carry awareness into action without hesitation. She felt the subtle thrill of readiness and the cautious pulse of anticipation, a realization that the journey she had begun was ongoing, each decision layered with consequence, each observation a tool for navigating complex dynamics. The balcony doors framed the city below, a mixture of light and shadow, distance and proximity, and Isabella understood that the lessons of the night were not confined to walls or corridors, but extended into every choice she would make, every interaction, every step forward. Dominic remained a silent figure beside her, his calm authority anchoring the lessons with presence and example. And as she took one last careful survey of the room, the mansion, and the city beyond, she felt a quiet determination, a readiness to engage with the unfolding challenges, and the awareness that each subsequent moment would demand precision, insight, and adaptability, shaping not only her perception but her evolving connection to Dominic Romano, a balance of respect, attentiveness, and measured influence that would define the path ahead and the choices yet to come.